Good evening and welcome to our spiritual power tools exploration. I'm very excited about tonight. It's the 7 steps for successful life transitions, and it's the only one we're going to talk about most likely today. And it's probably the tool that I use in addition to brain spotting most in my practice. And I've been using the 7 steps personally for many, many years. So I'm very excited to share it with you. So let me get us started here. All right. Current from beginning. There we go. All right. So here we go. Okay. So before we get started with the 7 steps, how did it go this week with the tools that we talked about last week? We had the spiritual thermometer was one of them, and that's our way to check in to see where we at in relation to our emotional intensity. Are we, filled with emotion where we need to step back and work with that before we proceed, or are we in clear think? It's just a really nice tool. I have kind of a half-page printout of this that I would give out in my practice, and I also keep it on my refrigerator. I don't think I actually have one right now, but I keep it on my refrigerator usually, and in my car. I had one for a while, and just as a constant reminder, it's like, okay, where am I at? Don't act if I'm below a 5, and just to kind of help get myself in the rhythm of that. And how did your meditation station go? Do you have a time and a place where you like to meditate? Did you give yourself any journaling time? And just how did all of that go? Okay, I've got somebody saying something here. Using the questions in the journaling chapter has been helpful. That's great. I've gotten some insights into how I would act if my soul ran the show. Isn't that wonderful? Like, who would have thought, just being able to say, okay, if I weren't overrun by my emotions right now, if there were that calm, Zen-like part of me, my soul, figuring this out, what would that look like? So yes, I love those questions too. Good. All right. So, so we're going to go ahead and go on. Feel free to keep adding whatever you'd like to the chat section. I'll check it every now and then. So tonight we're talking about spiritual power tool number 4, 7 steps for successful life transitions. And this is a whole section on Jane Elizabeth's website, on the Center for Enlightenment website, that has the entire chapter on the 7 steps as a single web page, which I'll include when I send out our recording from tonight. And I invite you, as you're looking at the 7 steps and using them at any time, to go and just read through the chapter. I usually just kind of look at the questions and work with the questions. And recently I went back and I read the chapter again, and I swear there were like 3 or 4 new sentences I had never seen before that they just put in the book before I picked it up off my table, because I don't remember them being there. So every time I go over that, I'm seeing something new. I'm seeing something that is speaking to me in that moment, that helps me with whatever process I'm working on at that time. So it's just really been helpful. So part of what she's talking about as she's describing the 7-step process is that when a chunk of our subconscious iceberg comes to the surface, it's there to be released. And sometimes we can just kind of hold it and observe it, and it's a little chunk of ice, so we can just kind of notice it and go, oh, wow, that's really interesting information. And then it kind of disappears and it melts away into the ocean of consciousness. And that's great. But sometimes there are bigger chunks that come up that don't dissolve and dissipate quite so easily. So they need a little bit more support. And that's what the 7 steps process helps with. that chunk has been a part of us. It's been part of our identity. And sometimes it takes longer. You know, it hasn't just been with us this lifetime. It's been with us, you know, it's a soul issue perhaps that we need to work with a little bit more. Even if we don't know what the soul history is, it's still about taking time and healing what it means for us today in order to dissolve that whole piece. So she also says in this chapter that change is unavoidable, which we know, right? But we resist change. And this is a tool to help us embrace change and move with it instead of fighting against it, because we won't win against change. Change always wins. Change always wins, and we can cooperate with it or not. But what we want to do is be in alignment with the highest possibility for our soul. So if we're working towards a goal, whatever that heart's desire is for you, what your desire and what your effort is going to do is going to bring up those parts of the iceberg that are against the goal. So anything unlike what you're trying to get to is going to bring up the things that aren't in alignment with it, and they need to be acknowledged and worked with and released, because that's what helps us change. Because if we have a goal to, oh, I don't know, like a common one is, you know, we have a goal to lose weight, right? Well, then that means we're going to have to let some things go, and in order to support that goal. And we may have resistance to that because of habit or because of what it meant, you know, what eating meant to us growing up, or, you know, some of those patterns that are going to come up and get in our faces when we're working towards a goal. So, you know, some of those take more processing. And the 7 steps I really like as a tool for working with some of those deeper things. Journaling is great because it can help us look at patterns and see patterns and work through emotions in the moment, and, you know, just give us ongoing general insights and specific insights during our process. And then the 7 steps is for really working on a bigger chunk that needs some extra TLC to work with. Okay, so we're going to go through each step and the questions for it. And I've shared this before, and I know we did in July a 3-week series on the 7 steps. So you'll have to forgive me for the same stories I'm going to tell. You know, if you've heard me, if you've known me for more than 5 minutes, you've heard me talk about this process probably. So you'll just have to forgive the redundancy. And I know I never get tired of talking about it. So, and I always love hearing Jane talk about it, Jane Elizabeth talk about it too. So repetition is good for us, right? All right. So right now, as we're starting to go through each step and the questions of each step, think of a person, place, thing, or situation for which you need a fresh perspective. You know, it could be, you know, right now during COVID, right? Part of what we did earlier in July with our 7-step process was releasing our pre-COVID self, because our world has completely changed. So that's an example. You know, perhaps there are relationship changes in your life, and that's an example of something that we have to step back from and work with, so that we're cooperating with the best interests of everyone involved. Moves, you know, sometimes if we feel stuck with ourselves, taking ourselves up the 7 steps outside of COVID is a really good way to get a new perspective and to see what we need to see that maybe we don't want to see. You know, like, oh yeah, I do have to take these action steps in order to feel better about myself, but I have some resistance to that. So what's my resistance? And the 7 steps kind of helps churn that up. Maybe somebody's leaving your life, maybe you're moving to a new home or town or job, or maybe you're making a change within yourself. All of those things are good uses for the 7 steps. So one of the many things that I love about the 7-step process is that it gives us an opportunity to look at the good things, not just the difficult things. A lot of times when we're journaling about something or when we're processing something, we're looking at the difficult things and the things that are making us feel bad in the moment, and working with those and working through those. The 7 steps process gives us an opportunity to look at the whole picture. How did this, what am I grateful for right now? So the first step is, I forgot to put the titles of the steps on this. Well, anyway, you can see it on the stairs. The first step is gratitude and acceptance. So thank you, God. What are you thankful for regarding this relationship or situation? What has it brought to you? And sometimes when I was releasing, but anytime I release something that I'm just feeling kind of gnarly about, sometimes the only thing I can come up with is, thank you, God, for the opportunity to let this go. And maybe that's the only thing I write for the whole 7 steps of what I'm grateful for. Maybe I can go back later and add some more once I've been able to get past the anger or the resistance that way. What have you gained from the relationship or situation? How have you benefited from it? How has this person or circumstance been important in your life? So this is all acknowledging the good things, because anytime we're making changes, we want to acknowledge the good things too. So we're not bringing those good things into a new situation where those same good things aren't going to be there, or we want them to be there, we're looking for them, but they don't fit the situation. So we're holding on and we're trying to make something old out of the something new, and we can't just embrace the something new. And one of my favorite personal examples of that is my family's transition from Florida to New Mexico when I was pregnant with my oldest. We were just wanting to make a change, and we were guided to make a change, so we moved to New Mexico, and we were going to be downsizing. So we sold, my husband at the time and I sold both of our cars and got a little RAV4. It was this bright blue RAV4, and that was going to be my car. And we were going to drive that to New Mexico, and then he was going to get a little beater car to drive around, and who cares? And it was great. So this is the family car, but it was going to be my car. And so we sold our cars, we bought this RAV, and it was the first car either one of us had with a fob where you can remotely unlock the doors. And before we even got out of Florida, he would unlock the doors before me. We'd be headed to the car, and he would get to it before me, and it was driving me crazy. And I was embarrassed that it was driving me crazy, because that's really stupid. That's a really stupid thing to be driven crazy about, but it was really bothering me. And at the time, Jane Elizabeth and I were talking on the phone once a week, and I brought it up to her, and I said, I'm even embarrassed to bring this up to you, but this is driving me crazy. He's this is like supposed to be my car, essentially, and he doesn't give me a chance to, push the button first. And she said, well, have you taken your old car up the 7 steps? And at that point, I had only known about the 7 steps for about 4 years, about 4 years, which is still a long time, but I was still wet behind the ears. So I said, no, I haven't taken my car up the 7 steps. I'm glad to get rid of it. I'm excited about the move. This is a good thing that we're doing. And she says, well, why don't you just take your old car up the 7 steps and see what happens, see what shows up. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So I sat down and I started writing about what I loved about my old car. And it was the first car that I ever bought all by myself. It was my first 2-door car, not a station wagon that I grew up with. No offense to our station wagons. I was grateful for those too. And I didn't buy the car all by myself. My dad co-signed. I will admit that. Anyway, but I got it right out of college, and I was so excited. I loved that car. And as I was writing about it, it became clear to me that what that car represented was my single girl life, right? It was my freedom, my independence. And here I was. I mean, that was great for when I bought the car, but here I was pregnant with a family on the way, and really not a single girl anymore. So I was trying to take my single girl identity into this new life with my family, not just into the new car, the little RAV4, but I was trying to take that into this new expansion of my family that was coming, and that was not going to work. So once I realized that, it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how important that had been for me. And I'm grateful to let this go so that I can be the mom I need to be. I can be the wife I need to be. I can, have this new identity that's coming forth as we're moving. And once I realized that and was able to let that go, then he still got to that door lock before I did, but it didn't bother me. I had no reaction to it. I chuckled actually the first time, because it's like, oh my gosh, this feels so good not to have any kind of internal gnarly reaction to that, because it's like, hey, we're in this together, right? So anyway, so that's why it's important to let go even of the good things, because when we're making changes and when things are changing, because we can't, like, every situation is going to have its own good things. And if we try to take the good from one into the other, it doesn't always fit. Jane Elizabeth has this wonderful metaphor too that she uses. It's like if you live in Alaska and you've got all you've got your mucklucks and your big coat and all of your sweaters and wool, everything, and you're moving to Southern California. So you can take all of that Alaskan stuff, clothing and heaviness to Southern California if you want to, but it's not going to work. It's not going to serve you at all. It's going to be heavy and really completely pointless. And then you're not going to be prepared for Southern California. But if you let go of all of that stuff that belongs in Alaska, just let it stay in Alaska. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Leave it in Alaska, and then you're more open and you're freed up to get prepared for what's awaiting you in Southern California. And that's the beautiful analogy for what this is. We need to be open to those new opportunities and not carrying our expectations. We'll get to that step soon. Into the new situation. We're not carrying our old, oh, I love this so much, I want this always, and it needs to be in every one of these situations. It doesn't work most of the time. It just doesn't work. And I'll talk later too about other ways that I've used this process over the years so that I can be current with what I need to be current with my kids growing up, and different life changes that inevitably happen. So step 2 is also part of the looking at the good things. Step 2 is the step of good times. How did this person or situation bring joy to your life? List the happy times you remember. What are the good things that you enjoyed about this person, place, thing, situation? And then step 3 is unfulfilled hopes and missed opportunities. And I like to call it, because it's an earthier word for me, I just call it the step of expectations. What did I expect from the situation? What did I expect to happen? With the RAV4 example, I expected that to be my car. It was my car, and I was going to bring my independent woman self into this family situation. And man, that was going to cause problems, right? And that is not why I'm divorced, but it would have been. I would have happened a lot sooner, right? If I had tried to make that fit. So how did you expect the other person to behave, or what outcome did you expect from the situation? How do you wish you had behaved? So you get to see our could have been, should have been, would have been our hopes and I wish I would have, I wish I could have, I think I should have, about the other person, about ourselves, but also about the other person. So it goes both ways because we have expectations. We don't always behave in ways that we want to, or we look back on something and we can see the 59 ways we could have done it better. We could have done it differently, or the 59 ways they could have done it differently, or they could have done it better. And we want to just let all that go because it's over. And if we're still holding on to those, we're not current with what's happening now and open to that intuitive guidance for the current situation. And what do we need right now? What did you want most from the other person or situation? What remains unfulfilled regarding this person or situation? So if I felt unfulfilled with my single girl car, my independent woman car, I needed to make peace with that because that time in my life was over. It was very much over. And, and I needed to be okay with letting go of any other hopes and dreams I had for that time in my life. Because, is that sad? No, it's not sad. It's just a life transition. And this is where I'm at now. This is where I want to be. So why wouldn't I let go of where I have been in order to be current with where I want to be and where I'm going that suits my goals better. All right. Okay, I'm just checking our chat and people have been meditating in the garden. Nice, very nice. In the mornings, some chunks came up this week. Can you take an emotion up the 7 steps? Oh my gosh, absolutely, absolutely. Because the 7 steps is also really great for learning about ourselves. It's not just about releasing, although that's awesome and it will do that inevitably. But also as we're writing and answering these questions, you can see how it's going to pull up information and things that like I didn't know what that old car represented. All I had in my mind was like, hey, good riddance, we're on our way, let's keep going, let's go to New Mexico. But that writing process helped me understand, it helped me clarify what this feeling was that I had. And yeah, I had something specific to work on and release, but we can do that with an emotion too. Absolutely, absolutely. And you can have your emotion right. That's in the journaling step or the journaling power tool. You can have your emotion write its message to you. Somebody is sharing, and let that speak. Absolutely, let that speak. And good backup for the 7 steps. Helped me welcome those broken off emotional pieces, memories, feelings, to raise to the surface of my awareness. Yes. Yes. Good, good, good. And brain spotting is a great tool also. I can go into that sometime, but it's brain spotting and the 7 steps are the 2 tools in my practice that I use the most to support people with their own self-awareness and discovering whatever needs to be discovered on the inside. And we're all different. We all have our own individual icebergs in there. So our healing has to be guided internally, even if we have external people or tools to help us out. It's still that, what is my insight trying to tell me in this? Yeah. And journaling helps you realize that you aren't angry or unable to forgive. Sometimes it's just sadness. Yes. And that's the thing about putting things in black and white on paper too, is that it's different when we're, I want to say, materializing our insides and putting them out on paper, because our minds just go back and forth with things. Our minds are all over the place, and there's no clarity until we can really get real with, okay, what is going on in there? What is going on in my head? What is going on in my heart? What's going on there? And looking at the patterns and looking at the conversations that are happening from all different angles, and be able to let it out, because we get scared of our emotions because we feel our emotions in our bodies, and that tells our brain something's wrong, I have to do something, and then we start overthinking and scrambling to make the feeling go away, and then it just kind of all gets jumbled up, and we end up just stuffing it back down into our subconscious, and it doesn't get resolved. So journaling is about, okay, I'm feeling emotions. I don't want to feel them. Can we all just can we just say that? And I think that's a fair thing to say. Nobody really wants to feel their negative emotions. Positive emotions, oh yeah, all the time. But negative emotions we don't want to feel. So too bad. Can we say too bad? We're human. We're going to have emotions that don't feel good, and that's part of why Jane Elizabeth created these tools for herself in the first place, is because, yeah, this feels bad and I don't know how to navigate this. And I know being stuck in it is not right. There's something inside of me that tells me being stuck in this emotion is not true. I don't have to be stuck in this emotion. So let's bring it out. And it could be, I'm journaling about anger, but really when I get down to it and when it comes out, I'm really feeling afraid of something. And my anger is protecting me from that fear or whatever. You know, it's just one of a billion examples of how we can see something different when we're willing to put it out on paper and just write about it. All right, so step 4 is disappointments and difficulties. And the questions for this include, why are you angry, sad, or resentful with this person or situation? List specific incidents that caused you disappointment. I mean, the nice thing about the 7 steps too is that you don't have to write about every detail, because, you know, I've had some 1 or 2 or 100 times where I could have filled a book with the things that I was disappointed about in a given situation. But, you know, the third question is, what is the greatest challenge you encountered? And if we focus on the things that are most angering and working with that, and, you know, we have the strongest feelings about and working with that, then the rest of them kind of get released and looked at and examined by proxy, you know, because usually it's the big things that are the problem, and the little things are just symptoms of the bigger pieces of emotion that we're dealing with. I like this question, number 4. What decisions, attitudes, or beliefs do you now have because of these disappointments? And how do they affect your life? That's really helping guide us getting real with whatever it is that we're feeling. Oh, I'm feeling angry at this person. And for, you know, 3 questions on this step 4, maybe I feel totally justified that I feel angry with them. But if I look at, okay, how is this anger affecting me? How is it affecting my life? What decisions, attitudes, or beliefs am I holding because I'm feeling so angry with this thing? Then I can reflect on, wow, this is really doing me no good at all. It makes me feel guarded. It makes me feel protected. It, you know, whatever. And how is that affecting my life? Well, it's coloring my decisions. It's coloring my choices. It's keeping me from experiencing things I want to experience because I'm trying to avoid more of that negative emotion that I'm feeling. So being in, you know, just get real with that, right? All right. And everybody's favorite, the forgiveness step. It's funny, I think I shared this in July too, but when Jane Elizabeth would teach the 7 steps classes in person over the years at different places, the 5th step of forgiveness was always the least attended class of the entire series. And we would always just kind of laugh about that. It's like, yeah, it's forgiveness week. Look at all the empty chairs. So anyway, so why do we resist forgiveness? We resist forgiveness because I don't think people really understand what forgiveness means. You know, it has meant so many things over the years, over the centuries, and it still means so many different things to different people. And I know we had a whole class on that too, so I will refer you to that. But for our purposes of healing, our purposes of releasing and letting go, forgiveness is really accepting what has happened, that it has happened, and being willing to let go of the emotional energy around and our emotional reactions around what has happened and what is now. And that's still not easy, but it isn't letting somebody off the hook. It isn't letting somebody get by with something. It isn't being a wimp. You know, it's being free of emotional baggage that would otherwise be packed into our iceberg and carried around with us until we release it this lifetime, 5 lifetimes from now, whatever. But why not just this one, right? Why not this one? And then these questions on this step too are wonderful to help with that process. What's the hardest thing to forgive regarding this person or situation? Maybe you can think of 50 things that need forgiving that you don't want to forgive, but pick the hardest one. What's the hardest one? What is the one like, okay, maybe these other things I can let go, but this one thing is hard. Okay, why is that the hardest thing? What is it about that thing? And so it's continuing that process of exploring, what is this that I'm holding on to? And what are all the aspects to it? So this is just kind of turning it another way and being able to look at, what am I holding on to? And how will your lack of forgiveness affect your life in the future? Isn't that great? Not, you know, what is it going to take for you to forgive, but let's just look at what's your life going to look like if you hold on to this? What is that going to do for you? You know, how is that helping you? And then what is causing you not to forgive? That's a wonderful question to ask. What is causing you not to forgive? Why are you holding on to this? What are you gaining out of not forgiving? And how will your life improve if you do forgive? So all good questions to help with that forgiveness process. And if you want to, and I've had lots of people do this over the years, scratch out the word forgiveness and put what is causing you not to let go. What is causing you to hold on so tightly? How will your life improve if you let go? So we can bypass that whole forgiveness bad rap altogether. All right. And then the last 2 steps, 6 and 7, are basically the review and release and completion steps of, you know, just kind of tying up loose ends in the process. So step 6, I really like this review and release of, like, think about the good things that would happen for the other person, but good things that could happen for yourself is the third question. How will letting go change your life for the better? The first one is about the positive events that could happen for the other person. If it's a situation, then maybe you don't need to address that, but just overall, what good do you see? What good can you see coming out of you working through this and letting go? What are the possibilities that are going to open up to you, that could open up to you if you let this go? And you can write about how this difficult situation could be harmoniously resolved. What would that look like? What could you do? And this is an interesting one too, because you could write, well, I could, you know, let this go and you know, see if I can not react to that person again next time I see them, and then see if anything agitates you while you're writing that, you know. So this is kind of a check-in time too of am I really done with this process? Am I really ready to release, or is there more work that I need to do? And I use this in conjunction with brain spotting a lot because it's the residual stuff. There's a lot that's going to get processed through the 7 steps, but sometimes there are those pieces, those chunks of iceberg that have grit and rocks and debris in it that are just harder to let go of and harder to dissolve. And with brain spotting, we go in and we help process that even more. Journaling is a primary processing tool for ourselves because we're taking ownership of it. And then brain spotting is a tool that helps kind of go in a little bit more to the unconscious mind-body storage to help release some of those things too. So they work so beautifully together. All right, and then that number 4 question I love. Is there anything you're holding on inside that you're afraid to address? If so, what is it? And this, this is your journaling process, so it's safe. It's only for you. Even when I work with other people on this, I never ask them to turn in their journaling. This is like, nope, you tear the paper with swear words, whatever you got to do. I don't need to see it. No grammar checks, no punctuation checks, just let it all out. So this is an opportunity to be real with you. What are you holding on to? Are you holding on to anything? Is there anything left over there? Just go in there and kind of stir the pot a little bit and see if anything floats to the surface. What is that? And then if there's anything, you can go back to the other steps and add it. I've shared before that I have my pretty journal where I keep all my insights and things I want to be able to go back and look at as I'm learning them. I want to be able to refresh and remind and encourage myself to keep going. You're on the right track. But then I've got my legal pad that I do my 7-step work on and my emotional journaling work on, because then I can just, say whatever I want to. I can tear it up and throw it away and be done with it and really let it go. But I also, because of this step, this question, number 4, is there anything you're holding on inside that you're afraid to address? If so, what is it? And I can go back. I put the name of each of the steps. So I have a page on my legal pad for gratitude. And then the next, I flip it over. And then the next page, I have good times. And then the next page, I have unfulfilled hopes and missed opportunities. The next page, I have disappointments and difficulties, which usually ends up being just D&Ds, as I'll put on there. And then forgiveness, and then review and release and complete. The last 2 steps are usually on one page. Everything else, maybe gratitude and acceptance and good times are on the same page, depending on how good I'm feeling about the situation. But usually I can squeeze them on one page. But everything else gets their own page, and I go back. I flip between them because sometimes the thing that I'm grateful for has also come with a lot of hardship. Sometimes my hardship has leftover hopes and dreams. So sometimes they overlap. Sometimes my good times I feel sad about, so it becomes a disappointment and difficulty. So these things are not all separate. It's just a way to help kind of organize them a little bit. So being able to jump to whatever step is needed is important. And especially when we get to this 6th step where, we need to reflect, am I really ready to let this go? And it's okay if we're not. But then we know that we're holding on to it, and at least we're doing it consciously. It's like, no, I don't. And I've had people say, I don't want to let this go yet. I feel like if I let it go, I'm going to be too vulnerable. All right, great. Well, now you know. It's like, it's okay. Now you know. Now you can work with it consciously, because it's all about being conscious. And I would encourage that only because I know that at some point that soul is going to be ready to take the next step of letting go. Okay, this anger, let's say this anger has served its purpose. Now I can let it go. Now it's time to let it go. So, yeah. All right. Step 7 is the completion step. And how do you see your circumstances differently now that you have uncovered information by means of this 7-step process? How do you see things differently? How do you feel differently? Do you feel lighter? Do you feel maybe not lighter, but at least you have some insights to work with? Do you feel inwardly resolved and ready to complete this process? If not, you still have the opportunity to go back and review and work with the other steps as needed, wherever you need to go with that. And then the final part of this 7-step process is making a commitment to letting go and moving forward, saying a prayer. I'm grateful that I'm able to release this and new opportunities are coming into my life. There are many ways that you can release your processing notes through ritual. Like some people burn them. I've tried over and over again over the years to burn my processing notes, and I can't for the life of me get those things to stay lit. I will take them in I've tried them even in a fire pit and different ways to like burn them, and the fire always goes out. So there's so many people think that is just an awesome way to do it. And it's like, how do you keep those things lit? What has happened is I've tried to light them over and over again, and then I just get frustrated. And then I feel like, okay, this is the universe telling me I didn't do it right. I'm not messing with that anymore. I'm just not going to burn them. So my next favorite way, that wasn't even a favorite way because it never worked, but my very favorite way was always tearing them up and putting them down the garbage disposal. And when I started sharing that in classes, people are like, Lynn, that is not good for your pipes. You can't do that. But I loved the earthy grinding sound, because that felt to me like I am releasing this sucker, whatever it was I was holding on to, it is gone. But apparently it wasn't, it was sticking to my pipe. So now my favorite way is to shred it in my shredder, because it's still got that really loud, earthy sound, and it's like grinding up in there and whatever. So find your own way to release your processing notes. Even if you are a typer for your journaling, you can delete it, delete that and just push the button, but make it a ceremony, make it a ritual. Like, okay, I'm letting this go. It is going, it's being deleted. I'm going to my recycling bin on my computer and I'm deleting it there too. So it is gone. It is unaccessible to the world forever, except for those tech people who know how to retrieve those things. So it's gone forever for me if I do that, but I'm a writer, so I like my pen and paper. All right, so let's look at some of the different ways that we can use the 7 steps. Oh, also as part of that releasing process, once you do whatever you do with your notes, figure out your own favorite way. Jane Elizabeth has a beautiful recorded meditation on her website on the 7 steps page, which I will send you. You can find it anytime, but I will make sure I include it in our recording email. But there's a beautiful 25-minute meditation on the 7 steps that once you've completed your journaling, you can let her guide you in this process of the 7 steps, and you've done your journaling, so you know what each step is meaning for you. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful energy, a beautiful way to complete that process. So when do you use the 7 steps? For anything, anything. And I say that with an asterisk around, make sure you know what it is you're releasing, because sometimes people are feeling like, I don't know, I'm working on something and I just don't know really what it is. Should I do the 7 steps? It's like, well, what are you going to be releasing? You got to know, you got to be able to name what you're releasing in order to release it. So maybe just kind of watch that, whatever's coming up for you, and that's good for journaling. And until you can pinpoint the pattern or pinpoint the thing that it is that you want to release, then then it's journaling, right? Once you pinpoint what it is, something, what's that chunk of iceberg that you're releasing, then the 7 steps comes in. So grieving the loss of a loved one, including our pets. This is really great, and I suggest this a lot to people, and it's not anyone's favorite thing to hear, but if we anticipate the loss of a loved one, or I was going to say or a pet, but pets are loved ones too, right? So if we can anticipate that, then doing the 7 steps before it happens is a great way to honor, to be able to be present enough to honor and be there for that loved one while they're going through whatever they're going through, and without kind of hanging our emotions on the situation for them, when they're going through their process, being able to just, I want to say, be present with our own grieving process to move through that. And it's not fun to think about because it's change and it's loss, right? But if we can understand that we're going to go through that anyway, why not do it in a way that will support everybody and make it a higher vibration, a smoother process. Moving to a new house, city, state, country. Anytime I've ever moved, I've released my house and my community and the people that I've enjoyed and the people, of course, I didn't enjoy, and all of that. I've released every time. Because it clears, like with my car, it just clears out that energy. So as I move into my new location, I have the clarity to do what's, if anybody's ever moved, what a big task that is. So it's so nice to move and then have a clear mind about what needs to be done. And it just kind of keeps things moving instead of, I know that when we moved from New Mexico to Kansas, the people who were living in the house that we were moving into did not know about the 7 steps. I'll just put it that way. And they met with resistance and resistance and resistance to moving out of their house. I think the guy was like already distanced himself from the move and the work of the move, and I think the woman who was living there did not want to move, and so just all of that resistance and that emotion, it's so much harder to move emotion than it is to move stuff, and it's like, oh gosh, if they could just do the 7 steps. It wasn't my place to say, of course, at that time, but if they would just do their grieving process, and it would be so much easier. And I tell you what, I have watched a couple of series recently where it's been so painful to watch the ending of the series, not because, I was sad it was over, but because it was interesting and fun, but to watch the people and their situations, and how much emotion they were dragging through the process. And it's like, oh my God, this is so painful to watch. It's like, oh, just let it go. If I could give you the 7 steps, if I could give your character the 7 steps, I would just let it go. One was West Wing. And, I'm finally, that was like years ago, but I'm finally catching up with that. And at the end of that whole series, and they're moving out of the White House, sorry, spoiler alert. Everybody was like running up against the fact that they were having to get out. And it's like, well, of course you're having to get out. Just embrace it. And, and it's like, they're just making the process so hard. So I really have to watch my therapist and spiritual student counselor mind when I watch things like that, because, oh, come on, this is painful. It does not have to be this hard. Come on. Okay, anyway, that's my TV rant for today. Transitioning to a new job, let go of an old job. I work with people a lot looking for jobs, and I say, make sure you are clear from all your old jobs, because employers can smell that when they're interviewing you. They can smell that emotion. They can smell the hurt, pain, bitterness, whatever. You want that process through and let it go. And thank you for this new opportunity, wherever my new place is. Thank you. I'm ready for it. I have left my mucklucks in Alaska and I'm ready to move on. Changing life stage or situation. Oh my gosh, every developmental level of my kids' lives, I have released them so that I could be current with what their needs were, so that I wasn't treating my preschooler like a toddler, and I wasn't treating my kindergartner as a preschooler or my high schooler as a middle schooler, and I was able to stay current with what they needed and not holding them back, not, oh, I just loved it when you were a baby, it was so great. Not that babies are, nothing wrong with babies, there's nothing wrong with loving babies or loving your kids as baby stages, but they're not going to be there. And it's nobody likes being treated like they're younger or less than they are. Nobody likes that, and it doesn't help anything. So, be current with whoever it is in your life. Retirement. And actually, the first time Jane Elizabeth ever told me about the 7 steps was right before I got married, because that was a huge life transition. And it's like, oh my gosh, you've gone from really being with your family to, yeah, you're kind of on your own in college, but now you're getting married and you're moving into that situation, and that's a big life change. So here, use the 7 steps and help yourself be current with your life change. Retirement is another good one, because sometimes people retire because they want to retire. Sometimes people retire because of the situation is kind of forcing that, and but it's the solution that's happening. So it's all about embracing what's happening, and so that because there's always new opportunities for you. There's always, for us, there's always new opportunities in the next situation, but we're going to miss that if we're blinded by holding on to where we were. Getting a new vehicle because those vehicles represent something to us. Obsessing about a person or situation, if you find yourself doing that, or just thinking about a person, situation over and over again, the 7 steps is great to be able to help you see, okay, why am I obsessing over this? I need to let this go. Moving into a new year, I'm thinking that towards the end of the year, we'll do a 7-step Sunday night class series on releasing 2020. I think we have 1 or 2 things to release about 2020. So I think that would be a good thing for us. So we'll do that. And Jane Elizabeth has done that. There's lots of videos of her, and I always prefer listening to her than to myself, but my job is to pass this stuff on. One of my jobs is to pass this stuff on, and it's my joy to pass this on. So we'll do that. At every birthday, every time I have a birthday, I will release myself from my old age to, not my old age, let me rephrase that, from my former age to my upcoming age. And again, I mentioned earlier, anytime you're feeling stuck in life, release yourself. Like, okay, release your life. Just say, okay, I'm feeling stuck with what's happening in my world right now. Let me just let it go. Let me be grateful for all the things that I can be grateful for, so that I can see that better, because I'm not seeing that clearly now. And then let go of all the things I'm unhappy with, so that I can get clarity on what I need to reinforce and what I need to act on in a way that will help me feel better about my life situation. That's a very small list of all the different ways we can use the 7 steps. It's about dealing with change and dealing with our resistance that comes up when things change. And it's not bad that we have resistance, it's human, but this helps us deal with all of the emotions around any changes, so we're not just adding to our iceberg. We don't want to do that. So let me see, what time is it? Oh my goodness, okay. All right, so I am going to refer you to the 7 steps process and the meditation online, because for us to do one right now would be longer than I want to keep you, but I do want to do a meditation. So next week we're going to talk about what happens guidance after you use the 7 steps, and the different kinds of things that can shift and happen, and you're letting go of something old and being open to something new, so you'll be recalibrated, realigned to the shift in your iceberg. So anyway, so thanks for listening to all that, and let's just have a little bit of meditation time. I'm so grateful to be able to share this, and because it reinforces my gratitude for knowing it in the first place and having these tools in my life. I'm just very grateful. I invite you to just think about whatever came up for you to release, if there was anything when we started. And just feel yourself holding that person, place, situation in your hands. Just looking at it. And feel any emotion it stirs in you. And observing on the inside, you can feel the weight that it holds. Maybe it's something very heavy, maybe it's something very light, maybe it's something in between. Just notice that's the weight of it. And maybe as we were walking through these questions, you could find the gratitude. Just see that in what you're holding, the things that you're grateful for. See the good times. And don't worry if you can't see gratitude or good times in something right away. It's okay. Just say thank you for the opportunity to look at this, to lift this from my mind, my heart. Then there are the hopes and dreams, the expectations. Whatever remains unfulfilled. Sometimes we hold on to something so long, too long, because we're trying to make our hope come true instead of walking away when it's time to walk away. So just notice any unfulfilled hopes and dreams, any missed opportunities. All part of this piece of iceberg. And then inside of there, the disappointments and difficulties as well. It's okay. It's okay to acknowledge our feelings. It's okay to acknowledge that we're unhappy about something, that it didn't work out, or we feel a loss or a victim of something. Just acknowledge those feelings. Being able to acknowledge ourselves, our feelings, our experiences. It's so healing. We're the only ones who can do that for ourselves. We can get somebody's agreement on the outside, somebody's outer validation, but our own internal exploration is what heals us. As you hold this piece of iceberg and all of these different aspects frozen into it, check in with your willingness to forgive, which means willingness to accept the reality of the situation, that whatever has happened, it has happened. Wherever we are at today is where we're at today. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready do you feel to let this go? And just notice where you're at with that. And within that measurement, what do you see as the hardest thing to accept and let go? What's the hardest thing to make peace with? As you look at this and watch this, really this iceberg chunk, this part of your subconscious, this issue to release that's in front of you, has been a beautiful part of your learning and growing. If it's in your face, so to speak, to let go, then that means that there are more beautiful opportunities for you to experience beyond this resistance that's up, beyond this change that needs to happen. And this is where faith comes in, so important. Faith and trust in the bigger picture, faith and trust in yourself, courage to move through this little step of unknowing, little void between what we've known and what is yet to be known. And now see yourself lifting this piece of iceberg, the situation, person, yourself, a change that's happening. Just lift that up and see yourself lifting it into a light. Letting it go into light. And make a commitment to yourself, or say a prayer, whatever form suits you. That says something like, I want the highest good for my heart and my soul more than I want to hang on to this. I want my new opportunities more than I want to hang on to something that isn't mine anymore. And when we do this work, we have lots of support. Call them whatever you want to, out-of-body teachers, angels, guides. Just let yourself feel that support. a supportive presence beyond your sight. Thank you for helping us see whatever we need to see in order to move forward. Don't let us be stuck in something old that's meant to experience and learn and move on. Thank you for opening us to new possibilities, new ideas, new understandings. New courage and inspiration. Thank you that compared to what awaits us, this is just a small stone on the side of the road. And feel your hands free of that iceberg, open, receptive. And maybe you still feel the weight of that chunk of iceberg, and honor that and let yourself walk through that 7-step process to help loosen and let it go. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Take a deep breath. And this inner work that we do is the most valuable thing in our lives that we can do. Because that release and that stepping into new energy and new possibilities blesses everyone around us. So thank you. Thank you to ourselves for doing this work. Thank you for those that help us. And thank you for each other willing to be here learning and growing together. I invite you to try out those 7 steps this week if you haven't done them before, or if you have, even if you have done them before, let yourself walk through those and see the healing that you have in your hands and your power. I will see you all next week. Have a great week, and I will see you soon.